senior judicial analyst, Judge Andrew Napolitano. How big a deal is this for all of the federal agencies that just willy-nilly snap their fingers and impose fines on all Americans?
Carl, good evening. It's always a pleasure to be with you. This is a huge deal. We all know what the deep state is. FBI, CIA, the parts of the government that never change no matter who's in the White House and who runs Congress. There is also the administrative state. And those parts of government don't change no matter who's in the White House and who runs Congress. So administrative agencies like the EPA, Environment, the SEC, Securities, the FDA, Drugs, they write their own laws.
ATF.
They enforce their own laws. They adjudicate violation of their own laws, and they punish those they find guilty. Did you hear me mention the judiciary in this? No, they do all of this on their own. They are legislative, executive, and judicial on their own. That's what this challenge is. And I think Mr. Jarski is going to win the challenge. And I think the Supreme Court is going to throw out the administrative state and basically to say to Congress, you want to write a law? You write the law. Don't give it to a bunch of experts and let them write it. You want to enforce a law? That's what you have the Department of Justice for. You want to try somebody for violating the law? That's what we have federal courts for.
Judge, this is music to my ears. I hate the overburdened bureaucracy in the government because, like you said, they can come in, they said, we wrote this law, Congress didn't write it, we wrote it, and we're enforcing it, and we're imposing our own fine based out of thin air because you violated the law that should never have been a law in the first place. So I am like, you know what? This guy, he might have been a bad guy as far as swindling money from his people, but thank God he's bringing the case.
So look, it's even worse than this. The prosecutor, the lawyer for the SEC, and the administrative law judge, they have the same boss. They both work for the SEC. There's no independent adjudication whatsoever. And this has been going on since the days of President Woodrow Wilson for 100 years. Yeah. This is the first time that it looks like the Supreme Court's going to say enough is enough.
But this came down to the ATF. Remember when the ATF proposed the law on the pistol braces? They said, we've written a law, we've changed it internally, and now we're making it a federal felony for you to possess the things that Congress has never addressed. If this gets overturned, what does it do for all these agencies and stuff? Does Congress have to make laws? Does everything go to the courts? And what about the people that have long since been convicted, paid fines, and maybe even time in jail for these things?
Well, I don't think the court will make this retroactive, because if they do, they'll have nothing on their plate but these old cases to resolve for the next 10 or 15 years. They're just going to make it going forward. But this will put the brakes on administrative agencies substantially, because if they want to charge somebody with violating one of their regulations, they're either going to have to show that Congress expressly authorized them to make this regulation, and they're going to have to enforce it in a federal court. And that is going to clog up the courts like you wouldn't believe. The result, a lot less regulation and a lot smaller bureaucracy. You are right to be happy. I'm ecstatic at this. And leading this charge is Justice Gorsuch, Donald Trump's first appointee to the court.
I love it. I am so here for this. Real quick, I got less than a minute left. But former President Trump said during his presidency, he was prevented from using the military to quell violence in democratic cities and states. Now, he's hinting now that he's going to use the military as an expanded role if he wins a second term. But there's a lot of issues. There's the Posse Comitatus Act. There's the Insurrection Act. There's a lot of different things that bar or support using or not using the military as a law enforcement arm domestically. What are those challenges, and can he do it?
Wow, I wish I could answer that with a yes or no. The Insurrection Act, this goes back to the presidency of George Washington, says when there is an insurrection, the federal government, if the states want it, can come in and quell the insurrection. The Posse Comitatus Act, which is right after the Civil War, says you can't use the military for domestic law enforcement, period. The Supreme Court has never reconciled the differences between the two. President Trump wants to use the military for law enforcement purposes when the states and the cities fail to do so, to protect the people and the property in those states, like the riots we had in the West Coast a couple of summers ago. The Supreme Court, unfortunately, this is going to go to the Supreme Court. They're going to have to decide what power the president has. Question: did the 1878 Act, the Posse Comitatus, modify the Insurrection Act of 1792? I think it did, but I'm not on the court.
Yeah, well, that's going to be another one. Two banging topics today. Judge Andrew Napolitano, you have forgotten more about law than I will ever know. Pleasure, sir.
It's a pleasure, Carl. All the best to you.